Coming up, Georgia's best chance of beating Alabama in the national championship game might not be what you think it is, but we'll tell you all about it next, right here on AT&T SEC Country Live. And I got to tell you, it is good to be back. First time in a while for me here on AT&T SEC Country Live, but I am raring to go today as we get ready to talk about an all-SEC national championship with, if you don't mind me saying so, a team that also I have followed closely here. It's a pretty good time to be doing AT&T SEC Country Live, Mr. Mike Johnson.
Yeah, it is. We wondered if we were ever going to get you back from Pasadena. You had such a good time out there and enjoyed such a fun Rose Bowl game, but I knew you'd show back up for this game in particular.
Yeah, I had considered staying out there, but when I found out, okay, well, national championship, my hometown on Monday with my hometown team playing the game, yeah, I better go check that out. I better go and be a part of that, and obviously we're looking forward to talking about a lot of that here over the course of our next few days together on AT&T SEC Country Live, but also a lot of other things that we're going to talk about today as well. A lot of the other SEC teams making news. We'll kind of deal with a bunch of that. But let's actually begin with the title game and start the show the way we always do with our first and 10 here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Of course, AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live, AT&T Entertainment your way. And here on item number 1 on our AT&T SEC Country Live first and 10 list, I think you can make the case here that Georgia's best chance of beating Alabama might be a little different than some would think, but it definitely kind of sort of factors back into a conversation that you and I have had here for several months. I thought that Jordan Rodgers, the SEC network analyst, made an interesting point in a recent broadcast. When you compare some of the plays that Jake Fromm made for Georgia in the Rose Bowl, some of the plays that Jalen Hurts did or maybe didn't make against Clemson, all of a sudden you see an interesting comparison here between these two quarterbacks. Let me give you a little taste of Jordan Rodgers talking about Jalen Hurts and Jake Fromm on a recent SEC network broadcast. Then tell me what you think about this. Here's Jordan Rodgers.
Two quarterbacks obviously coming off very different performances, I think, and they're going to square off in the national championship. Here's the thing. Jalen Hurts is a talented football player. He's poised. There's a lot of good things. But as a sophomore now and a guy that's played a lot of football, he's making some mistakes that I would expect out of a true freshman.
Logan Westrom in the comment section says, and he's an Alabama fan, by the way, that Fromm looked better than Hurts on Saturday. That's kind of the point that Jordan Rodgers is making the SEC network. And I'll turn to you and say, really two questions here. A, do you agree that, as Logan said in the comment section, Jake Fromm outplayed Jalen Hurts in their respective college football playoff games? And do you think the advantage that Georgia could have with Fromm over Hurts is a pathway to victory for Georgia in the national championship game?
First of all, let me say this. Here we go.
Yeah.
We're finally here. We've been waiting on it. Let's go. It's game week. We finally get to have Georgia and Alabama and talk about these two quarterbacks that we've talked about all year long finally matching up. I think that Jake Fromm, in my opinion, has to be the route for Georgia. And listen, I thought Lane Kiffin had some very candid comments about Alabama, about Nick Saban, about Jalen Hurts. He talks to Chris Lowe, and he says, you know what, I think Jalen Hurts' escapability actually gives Alabama a little bit of a step in the right direction. He thinks Alabama will win because of Jalen Hurts' escapability. Jalen Hurts, Alabama's not going to win passing the ball through the air. It hasn't been their blueprint all year. It's one of those things where at this point, with one game left to go on the schedule, you go in and you are what you are. And so I think that Jalen Hurts does a lot of great things with his legs. I think he's a good passer. I think his numbers match up with Jake Fromm's pretty good. But he's got to be able to win with his legs. I think that when you look at a pro-style system, when you look at what Georgia is offensively, Jake Fromm is going to have to win this game for them. I think that Alabama's seen some great running attacks. I don't think the running defense is as good as it has been in years past, but Alabama has shown the ability in big games a lot of times to shut down running backs.
Yeah.
To me, the game going into this game on Jake Fromm's shoulders.
So y'all know me. I mean, you know I'm rooting for Georgia to win the game. I've never lied about that. I've never pretended to be anything other than that. So I'm obviously speaking from the perspective of someone that wants Georgia to win. When I look at the way these two teams compare, Georgia sort of bullies other teams around the way that Alabama does. But against Alabama, it's almost as if there's still a few elements in which Georgia likes to be strong. Strong in the running game, strong on both lines of scrimmage. All these things that Georgia sort of relies on, it's a little tougher to rely on that against Alabama because they've been doing it a little longer. They're just a little deeper at those position groups. I thought the Alabama offensive line played really well against Clemson. The defense is kind of rounding back to form. Obviously, the Jennings injury is a factor in that discussion. But one of the reasons why I think Georgia has to lean on Jake Fromm is it is one of the few spots that you look on the field and I see a clear advantage. I just flat out think that Jake Fromm's a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. A lot of other position groups, if it's an edge for Georgia, it's only a slight edge. But for me, the difference between Fromm and Hurts right now is pretty clear. I think Jake Fromm's the better signal caller. If Georgia's going to win this game, I think the path to victory goes behind Jake Fromm here.
Yeah, and listen, we've talked about this a ton. And I think the key for me, the key statement to make here is I think the passing game for Georgia is better than the passing game from Alabama. I'm not ready to say that Jake Fromm is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts is a quarterback. I think, listen, the passing yards are very similar. The completion percentages are very similar. When you look at the ratios, you got a little bit a better ratio out of Jalen Hurts when you talk about touchdown interceptions. But 800 rushing yards for Jalen. So they do it in a different way. It's not to say that Jake Fromm is a bad quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's grown exponentially, in my mind, the way he's been able to not just throw the ball, not just open up the passing game, but he's been precise in the way he's done it and the way he's gone about it. Seemingly, he's grown up before our eyes. We said that a little bit last year about Jacob Eason towards the end of the year. Might have grown up a little bit during the year. There's no question that Jake Fromm has grown up a little bit this year. So I think that if you're talking about passing games, Georgia, yes, there is a big advantage there in terms of weighing those two teams.
Greg Steele in the comment section says, hey, listen, Jake Fromm, neither one of these two quarterbacks can throw the ball down the field. The fact, though, when you look at Fromm's numbers, that's not necessarily true. According to CFBFilmroom.com, Fromm on passes of 20 or more yards down the field, he's 44% this season. That's not a bad percentage on deep throws. Jalen Hurts, by comparison, only 29%. So one of the things that Fromm has shown the ability to do is throw deep when he is needed to this year. That's overall not a bad completion percentage. But I want to talk a little bit more about Jalen Hurts here for a moment, because you said, hey, you think the Georgia passing game is better than the Alabama passing game. You don't want to make it about just the quarterback.
Right.
And Nick Saban took a similar tack this week. He spoke at the College Football Playoff National Championship Game coaches teleconference early in the week, and when he was asked about Jalen Hurts, he also kind of pivoted back in the direction of the team. Here is Nick Saban talking about Hurts.
Jalen did a good job of controlling the tempo of the game, and I think that every player on our team would probably say that there were things that he could have done better in the game, and Clemson's got a really, really good defense to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So I think all in all he handled it pretty well, but there were some things that I think we need to do better offensively, and I think that's a team thing, not just a quarterback thing.
So he says it's a team thing, not a quarterback thing. But here's what you can't deny, though. I mean, Alabama's wide receivers may be the best in the country, at least in terms of not numbers necessarily, but the overall collection of talent. Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, you can go on and on and on and on, but the talent that Alabama has at wide receiver, I mean, for me, the only explanation for why you're not seeing big numbers from those guys and more than one of those guys getting catches in any given game, I think it comes back to Hurts. I don't want to sound like a Hurts hater here, but the Hurts issue is the vulnerability that I think Georgia needs to exploit.
Yeah, and listen, I think that there's a couple things. First of all, I'll bring up a couple of issues I do have with Jalen Hurts. I thought he did a better job of spreading the ball around in this past game. I thought, I think there was 8 guys that caught passes, which is very abnormal for Jalen Hurts. He has not spread the ball around at all. And Calvin Ridley said it before the Sugar Bowl. He said it's almost embarrassing when you walk into the wide receiver room and you see the catch charts, and he's so far above everybody else, and everybody else kind of guessing about what their role in the offense is. My problem with Jalen Hurts is not really his ability to complete passes. It's ability to complete passes where the receiver can run afterwards. Yeah. And it's been about hitting guys in strides. And too many times have you seen Alabama receivers go down to their knees, slide feet first, dive head first, having to catch the ball, and they're open. And a lot of times if you just hit them in stride, I think they have the ability to run. I will say this on the flip side of the coin. I think that Alabama's, and you brought up a good point, I think Alabama's wide receivers are more equipped to extend the passing game. I'll be interested to see, and listen, Georgia's got great wide receivers. I'll be interested to see Georgia's wide receivers against Alabama's corners in this game.
I want to talk about LSU here in a moment. Let me get a few more comments on this subject before we do. In the comment section, boy, they're coming in fast. Rondre Rogers says, it's not Hurts, it's the play calling. Bobby J. Smith also said, I am a Jalen Hurts hater. So some of y'all have been criticizing me for that before. That's not new here on this show. But Rondre Rogers says, it's not Jalen Hurts, it's the play calling here. Let me make a bold prediction. You tell me if you think I'm right or wrong on this. I don't know how much Alabama's been throwing deep in every game this season. I do believe they're going to try to throw deep a lot on Monday, and I'll tell you why. I think they know that Georgia is at its weakest with its defensive backs. Yep. Georgia does not have a national championship level secondary. Georgia's really good with its front seven. The secondary in a sort of a one-on-one type matchup against the Alabama wide receivers, that's a matchup that really favors Alabama. So if I say that Jalen Hurts is not good enough to beat Georgia, I think Alabama is going to make me prove that one way or another by putting Hurts in a position to win the game. I think you're going to see more deep throws to what could be open Alabama wide receivers than you may have seen in any game this season.
Yeah, I think that, listen, I really do think back. I look back to like right at the beginning of the third quarter in Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and I don't know how much you watched the Sugar Bowl, but I felt like at the beginning of the third quarter, once things started to slip in Alabama's direction, I really felt like they throttled down on offense. We saw so many different looks from the offense there in the first half. You're getting looks that you hadn't seen all year. I mean, Deron Payne scores a touchdown.
Is that why Saban was yelling at Dable?
And I feel like they really dialed things down. And Dable, I don't even know all the reasons. It was something about I want to run the ball, and here we are throwing the ball, and the clock stopping, and there's all kinds of things. Who knows? Who knows?
Right.
But I really do think that there was some looks. And all the news comes out before the game that Tua was expecting to play. I think there was some looks in the back pocket of Alabama that they didn't get. I fully expect. I don't know that it's more thrown over the top, but the play action game to me was not exploited at all. For how well it seemed like the running game was working at times, you didn't see much play action out of Alabama. I fully expect there to be a huge deal about play action in this game.
All right, we'll do more Alabama, Georgia here coming up a lot. We're actually going to do a ton of that this week, as you are aware. Let me do item number 2, though, on our AT&T SEC Country Live first and 10 list for right now. So LSU gets some good news. It looks like after a strong push from Texas A&M, LSU is going to get a chance to hold on to its defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda. This was first reported by the Baton Rouge Advocate. In fact, we'll show you the tweet here from Ross Dellinger that Dave Aranda is remaining with the Tigers, spurning Texas A&M again. The Baton Rouge Advocate's reporting. Also, Adam Rittenberg from ESPN.com kind of gives us some details on the numbers here. 4-year contract, $2.5 million annually. All that money's guaranteed. A massive, massive contract, obviously, for Aranda. I mean, what's your overall take here on big push from Texas A&M? LSU wins out, but has to pay him like a head coach. There are a lot of head coaches that are not making $2.5 million around the country. What's your overall take on this?
I think their hand was forced here. That's the number that I see, $2.5 million, and the situation with Ed Orgeron making $3.5 million and Dave Aranda making $2.5 million. I think that their hand was forced. I really don't think they had any other opportunity. I mean, we talked yesterday. Hans and I got on here and listed 6 possibilities of 6 different juniors possibly headed to the NFL from LSU. When you look at the fact that they don't really have that top 5 recruiting class, they're having to play still a lot of underclassmen. They had a ton of true freshmen play last year. Ed Orgeron was built to be a CEO style of head coach. I don't think LSU had any other direction to go other than to pay this $2.5 million. Now that they got him, I think it's a home run. I think you had to keep him. I think he's one of the best coordinators in the game. I think this keeps continuity at LSU, allows them to keep building that defense in the right direction. I don't think they had any other direction to go, and I think it's a good move to try to do anything you can to keep them on board.
But here's where I'd be concerned. You used the word continuity. Is this just like a 1-year stopgap? Is Dave Aranda about to be a head coach in college next year? Is he about to be an NFL defensive coordinator at that point in time? Maybe LSU can't just use money to keep him there. Maybe he wants to make the move to the professional ranks. I feel like right now there is something really strange going on at LSU. The fact that I haven't even been on the show to talk about this, but the fact we heard those rumors about Matt Canada leaving LSU, maybe even being fired by Ed Orgeron after it all looked fine. It looked like Canada might be staying. Having to pay out an unprecedented amount of money to hold on to a defensive coordinator because you're worried what's going to happen to your program if he were to depart. I think right now the Ed Orgeron coaching administration is on very, very shaky ground. It's really good that Dave Aranda is coming back. And Aranda working with some pretty talented guys on that LSU defense, some of them young, of course, but they will probably be a very good defense here in 2018. But LSU is more of a long-range proposition here. It's supposed to be a long-range play. I think the long-term health of LSU right now is very much in question.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, you mentioned it, and I agree with you. I think that if it's not next year, the year after that, somebody's going to come after Dave Aranda and want to hire him as a head coach. But you got to think right now, you're making $2.5 million as being a coordinator. Maybe if you're Dave Aranda, you second guess and say, do I want to go make $2 million to be a head coach at a smaller school or a stepping stone, or do I want to stay here and coach under Ed Orgeron and stay with all these talented players where I can kind of stay in the background? And you mentioned it. It's a good thing they kept him on board. I mean, it really is because, and I mentioned this yesterday, and I didn't want to sound like I was harping on LSU. I have a ton of respect for LSU's program, but you got to think that if you hire Ed Orgeron as maybe your third option as head coach, and then all of a sudden Matt Canada's gone, and then all of a sudden Dave Aranda's gone, and you're left with Ed Orgeron, you have to start asking questions about what direction the program is headed. Exactly. And I think that this was kind of a Band-Aid. This was to say, hey, you know what? We got to stop bad things from happening right now. We got to get over the bowl loss. We got to recruit at a higher level, and we got to get back to doing what we did when Les Miles was here. I think they just stopped this from happening sooner than it would have.
Terrence Collins in the comment section said when we started talking about LSU, he goes, no, it's not any fun if you guys aren't arguing about Alabama and Georgia. We'll argue about Bama and Georgia plenty, Terrence. Don't worry about that. Cliff Nelson in the comment section also says that in a couple years, LSU is just going to hire Dave Aranda as the head coach. That's a really hard thing to do, though. I mean, it's almost like in politics, sometimes you hear the phrase, people see a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate, they almost wish the ticket was flipped, that the vice president was actually the one running for president. But in college football, it doesn't really work out that way. If Ed Orgeron performs poorly enough that people want to replace him, the chance is some of that stink, for lack of a better phrase, is going to get on Dave Aranda as well. That he may not have the political clout to be sort of promoted to head coach if Ed Orgeron's struggling here. That's just a fact.
Oh, well, I mean, and if you feel that way, and if you are an LSU fan and you felt like that Dave Aranda might be the guy in the future as a head coach, then you should have hoped that he got hired away. Honestly, I mean, it's the Gus Malzahn model, if you will, where you get hired away to Arkansas State for a year. All of a sudden, Gene Chizik's out after a bad 2011 season or 2012, and all of a sudden Gus Malzahn's right back in. All of a sudden he can become the head coach because it's not one of those deals where you had to bring him in on top of the. A lot of those assistant coaches don't want to do that. They don't want to take the place of a sitting head coach that hired them onto that university. So if Dave Aranda moves on, if he does become a coach somewhere at a smaller school next year, then maybe you can get back to that. I think Dave Aranda would be an excellent head coach. I mean, we've heard a little bit from the guy. I love his mentality. I love how hard his defense plays. So if in the future LSU wants to go that direction, I'll give it 2 thumbs up.
All right, we'll do some more Georgia Alabama here coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, let me talk about another aspect of the Sugar Bowl and item number 3 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. I want to show you this video. I want to make a point about the video, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. So Jeremy Pruitt is walking off the field in the Sugar Bowl. I believe, and I hope I'm not giving credit to the wrong person, I believe it's SEC Country's Mike Griffith who is shooting this video. Mike Griffith is the one shooting the video. You'll see Pruitt leaving the field after the game, and then you'll hear Jeremy Pruitt defer an opportunity to speak to some reporters. Take a look at this, and then let me tell you why I have a problem with it. Here's Jeremy Pruitt.
What you got, something there?
That one's fired. Is that about as good as Gibson as you can play?
Yeah, we played well. Y'all need to talk to Coach Saban. We got one voice around here, and that's his.
So what Pruitt says there is, y'all need to talk to Coach Saban. We've got one voice around there, and that's his. That's typically true. Alabama coordinators, assistant coaches aren't typically allowed to speak per the policy that Nick Saban puts in place. But at bowl games, all that's out the window. Most bowl games operate on kind of an open locker room policy where, all players are made available. Assistant coaches are kind of available too, and that's just kind of the rule for bowls. It's very different from the regular season. But apart from that, this is not Nick Saban's employee anymore. He's finishing out his term there before he becomes the Tennessee head coach. On a day in which his defense played well, couldn't Jeremy Pruitt have used that time in with the media to sell Tennessee a little bit? And if you're a Tennessee fan, don't you want him with some cameras in front of his face to sort of take a victory lap on behalf of the Vols there?
I think that's the argument that I would go in the direction if you don't like what you saw from Jeremy Pruitt. I would say that if you're a Tennessee fan, you want him to kind of speak up. I think what this dates back to is when they were open for press conference before and he had to do the Sugar Bowl press conference. You saw a lot of the writers standing around him, and they wanted to ask him about the Tennessee situation. And he felt like that it was not the right place. He felt it was due to the players and the program in Alabama to answer questions about the Sugar Bowl. He thought it was a bad place to answer questions about Tennessee, and I don't blame him for that. And now, after the game, he's kind of walking. He could have answered a couple of different questions. I think that he thought it would be in bad taste again. After a huge Sugar Bowl victory for Alabama when they're headed to the national title, the players just dumped him with Gatorade, his defensive players, to speak about anything other than Alabama. Now, he could have gone on and talked about Alabama, but after what I saw before the game and after what, it amounted to a few different questions when he kept saying, listen, this is about Alabama, not Tennessee, I don't know if I blame him for deflecting some of the stuff that people wanted to ask him after the game.
A few comments here. Bo Molinari says, yeah, Pruitt should speak to the media. In fact, he should be in Tennessee talking to recruits. Chris Smith says, on the opposite side of things, that I'm being picky when I say that. Logan Westerman says, I think Pruitt's just being respectful. Maybe that's the case. Yep. Maybe I'm being a little too picky here. But let me show you a couple recent quotes from Tennessee recruits to give you an idea of what's at stake here for the Vols. Let me start with Jacob Copeland, a guy that you know well, or you know his story well. He's from your hometown there in Pensacola. Here is what Jacob Copeland recently said about the Tennessee situation. He said, there's a good chance I could have ended up at Alabama because of Jeremy Pruitt. Knowing that he's gone, it's in the mix for me now, meaning Tennessee. I'm going to wait it out until signing day. That's a guy right now that Tennessee's close with. I think that you have to use every opportunity that you have to your advantage to weigh in with a guy like Jacob Copeland. But it's not just Copeland. How about the four-star wide receiver, or I should say linebacker, J.J. Peterson, who's been thought to be a strong Alabama lean. We've talked about that. Peterson said, for my first official, he's going to the Vols on January the 11th. If I find a hat, it's over. And I don't know what that last part means. If they give him a Tennessee hat, if he's going to commit. But it has been thought, and even Peterson himself has kind of said that Tennessee's sort of his clubhouse leader right now because of the way that he feels about Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, don't you want, when you're close with a Jacob Clopin, when you're close with a J.J. Peterson, don't you want to use every potential advantage you have, including a de facto kind of out-of-nowhere media opportunity right there on the floor of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome?
It might be true. It might be true. And I think that there's definitely an angle to look at in that direction. But if I know Jeremy Pruitt right, and I know that obviously those two guys love him, he's probably getting on that bus, he's getting out the cell phone, and he's firing it up, texting J.J. Peterson, he's texting Jacob Copeland. Obviously, those two guys already love him. So I don't know if they need to be sold anymore in the direction seeing what Alabama's defense did. I think that it's going to be about Tennessee. I don't know if you want him to stand up after Alabama and be like, this team's great. We swarmed to the ball. This program's building to something. Then you head off to Tennessee. I think that his relationship's fine. I think that, obviously it stinks for Tennessee and their fans that another week is going to go by where you don't have your head coach on campus. But I do not blame him one bit for not wanting to speak out.
So last sentence for me, and I admit this is going to come out too harsh and it's unfair, but this is the feeling that I get. And by the way, I lived through this watching Kirby Smart at Alabama at the end of the 2015 season. The way that Jeremy Pruitt handles that situation there, I can't talk unless Nick Saban tells me it's okay. He makes it seem like Alabama defensive coordinator is a bigger job than Tennessee head coach. The truth is, it's the Vols who's paying him a bunch of money. It's the Vols who are trying to secure their future. I want to see Pruitt behave as if being Tennessee head coach is a bigger job than Alabama defensive coordinator, and his devotion to Tennessee is greater than his obligation to Nick Saban to not speak to the media.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess you know where I come from, and you know it's from being a player and it's being a part of these teams. I think that what you're seeing there is just Jeremy Pruitt's allegiance to the guys he recruited. I think that he says, listen, I recruited these guys. I've been coaching this defense up for a couple of years. We've finally almost reached our goal, and I'm not going to be disrespectful by pointing in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair argument. It seems like a lot of people in the comment section kind of agree with you on that. By the way, AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Let's get back to Georgia and Alabama here for a moment. For item number 4, let's look at Georgia here and what it did in the Rose Bowl as a build-up to what's going to happen in the Sugar Bowl here. Maybe a performance by the Georgia defense. They were clearly bothered by Oklahoma quarterback Baker Mayfield a lot during the Rose Bowl. And if you don't mind, I want to show you a couple of things that may have bothered Georgia here in this game. Can we start with Mayfield before the game? Mayfield on the Georgia side of the field. You see Mayfield there at Rose Bowl Stadium. He's running some passing routes. You see a Georgia defensive back right there in the corner of your screen to tell him to get off Georgia's side of the field, go back over to his own side of the field. Mayfield either didn't see him or just flat out ignored him. So that's one of the things that Baker Mayfield did. Then during the first half of the game, Rodrigo Blankenship misses a field goal. Georgia's already facing a deficit. Oklahoma at that point in time was riding high on offense. And Baker Mayfield is captured by Sports Illustrated on Twitter, gives you the throat slash gesture. And in the first quarter of this game, Baker Mayfield says it's over, that his Oklahoma Sooners had already beaten the Georgia Bulldogs. Well, obviously the second half is a much different story for Georgia defensively. The overtime, that was true as well. And then after the game, cameras caught Georgia linebacker Davin Bellamy with a pretty stern message to Baker Mayfield. Take a look at this.
Humble yourself.
So if you can't tell what Mayfield's saying or what Bellamy's saying there, he's saying humble yourself. Did Georgia humble Baker Mayfield in this game?
They should have. Listen, when you look at his numbers, I mean, he was good. Almost 300 yards passing, 23 of 35. He played well for what Baker Mayfield does. I don't know that they were even Baker Mayfield numbers, but they were good numbers. I got to be honest. The first time I watched the video of Davin Bellamy, I thought, man, it takes somebody that's pretty outlandish in their own right to yell at somebody else to humble themselves across the field. I mean, that's something I would have never done. I don't know anybody that's done that. But I think that they got to step in the right direction. I don't think Baker Mayfield was humbled. I mean, listen, Oklahoma's offense had a great first half, 31 points. They did some good things. I do think that Baker Mayfield needs to be humbled. I think that he's following down that path right now that you've seen from Johnny Football, that you've seen from other quarterbacks that you don't like. That's a slippery slope. When all of a sudden you're feeling that good about yourself and you're headed off the NFL and you're going to get into those NFL training camps, and guess who doesn't care? Everybody else on that football team. They don't care what kind of trophies in your direction. They don't care how many passes you threw in college, what school you played for. You're going to get up on stage, rookie, and you're going to sing us a song, and you're going to go through drills and carry everybody's pads, and it doesn't matter. So I think there is a stepping stone for Baker Mayfield that I hope I hope. I don't know if it played out when you look at the stat column, but I hope that Georgia, in a little bitty way, did humble Baker Mayfield.
And I think in the second half, you have to make a case that Georgia did play much better. You know, he was averaging over 9, or the Oklahoma offense was averaging over 9 yards a play in the first half. In the second half, just 4.2. Only 87 yards for passing for Mayfield in a 2 overtime game, but only 87 of those yards came after halftime. So, yeah, he was backing up the trash talk in the first half. But I think you have to give the Georgia defense credit for how it stepped up in the second half, don't you?
Well, you definitely do. And I'm not trying to take away from Georgia's defense at all. I think they played a great defensive game in the second half. But if the question stays out there, did they humble Baker Mayfield? I'm going to have problems with the answer to that being yes.
Michael Morrow, by the way, in the comment section says, why don't you and I arm wrestle over who's going to be the national champion? Michael, you're a Georgia fan. You don't want the national championship to come down to an arm wrestling match between the two of us, because I'll be laying on the ground. Mike's going to be holding up the trophy.
I did bring something.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I did. I forgot about that. I forgot about that. Yeah, I thought it's game week. My head was in it. I thought, man, I have a little something I want to bring, a little show and tell, if you will, and it feels pretty good. I might just, rest. I might just play with this the rest of the day.
Oh, he's got the national championship ring on.
Feels good. I forgot all about that.
I don't have anything like that, but I do have my Rose Bowl.
There you go.
Listen,
that's where I won.
We're riding high, doing what we can do here. I gotta admit though, when you can bring the championship ring out, that's where Alabama's been. That's where Georgia's trying to get. I certainly can't deny that, and of course, the Georgia defensive effort in the second half against Oklahoma, it's going to take more of that kind of stuff. Kirby Smart talked about what Georgia was able to do after halftime against the Sooners.
We got more pressure. We called the game a little more aggressively. I thought the kids tackled a little better. We still didn't tackle real good in the second half, but it was better than we did in the first half. I really just think they settled down. It's hard to put a finger on why they weren't settled early. I know you could say, well, it was the Rose Bowl. Well, it was Baker Mayfield. Yeah, we knew all that. And our team has got to play big in big moments and can't play what we call rat trap and have mental errors. And I thought in the first half, man, we had a lot of mental errors and just really not indicative of who we are defensively. And I thought they did a much better job of playing our style of defense. And it was not a lot of schematic changes as much as it was getting more comfortable with what Oklahoma was doing.
A lot of comments, by the way, coming in the hot comment section. Blake Wilson says, upon you revealing your championship ring, he says, humble yourself.
Yeah, maybe so. Might need to.
Raymond Cox says that you hit me with a tremendous right. Now I'm staggering. You're right. Listen, when you go to that kind of prop, in fact, when he went into his pocket, I'm not quite sure what he's going to bring out. But when you bring out the championship ring, listen, we have a lot of Alabama fans who watch our show every day. If you don't hear me say anything else, hear me say this. From the Georgia perspective, Alabama has been a lot where Georgia wants to go. And while Georgia clearly wants to beat Alabama, motivated by playing, this program, there is no denying the respect factor that's in place here. Alabama has done a bunch, what Georgia's trying to do for the first time on Monday. So from that standpoint, championship rings and talking about the past, that's very appropriate because Georgia's obviously, I think rightfully so, gratefully respectful of that past.
And listen, it goes the same way. It's all fun bringing out the ring and everything. But I honestly, I've talked to a ton of Alabama people that do feel the exact same way, that you see Kirby go off to Georgia and you see them doing the same things. And listen, this is Georgia winning the right way. I think it's nice for this to come up after the Baker Mayfield talk. There's no Baker Mayfield at Georgia. There's a lot of people that are rooting for Georgia to win this national title. I've been on Georgia's side all year. We've talked a ton and have heaped the praise on Georgia's football team. I think that you can talk about the assistant thing, 11-0. Georgia has as good a shot as win this game as anybody else that's played Bama in a national title.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, probably well said, and it's going to be a really fun game coming up on Monday. We'll do more of that game coming up. Can I just say one more thing about Baker Mayfield before we move off this? Because a lot of people in the comment section bring this up. You never see this junk in the SEC.
Right.
This idea that Georgia and Alabama are going to play on Monday and a Georgia player is going to go stand on Alabama's side of the field before the game, neither coach would tolerate that. Kirby wouldn't tolerate that from his own players. Saban wouldn't tolerate that. The stuff during the game, the over-celebrating every touchdown. I mean, this was, like, maybe I'm just old man now. Maybe I'm 1,000 years old. Baker Mayfield is such a turnoff for me.
Well, listen, and I'm trying to go back and see who wrote this in the comment section. Somebody wrote that he shouldn't have been handed the Heisman Trophy because the Heisman Trophy means more than that character. I don't know if y'all been watching the Heisman Trophy for the last 10 years, but I mean, listen, you go back to what you had with Jameis Winston was under all kind of scrutiny. Listen, I like Cam Newton as a player, but I'm just telling you, he was under a ton of scrutiny at the time. He won the Heisman Trophy. Johnny Football has been the same way, and so I think we can talk about SEC football definitely in that light, but I'm not ready to talk about the Heisman Trophy now.
Shannon Burgess says, "Down goes Brandon. Down goes Brandon." Yeah, the championship rig was a pretty good card to play there. No doubt about that. Item number 5 here in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. I think Florida's here on the verge of getting some good news, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the Gators here. Let me start with some player news. It looks like, based on what we've seen on social media, that CeCe Jefferson, the very good Florida defensive lineman, looks like he's coming back for senior year. He tweets out, "Senior year, about to be one to remember. Road to Atlanta. Go Gators." Worth pointing out that Twitter's on a binding contract. He's not now sworn to come back to Florida, but him tweeting that makes you think that he's strongly considering coming back to the Gators here, and I think that's probably good news, right?
Well, it's a huge deal. I mean, it's like Dan Mullen was hired at Florida, and the good news starts to trickle in. You're getting little tidbits of Emory Jones signs, and then you start getting all these. CeCe Jefferson in that right direction, and the defense they're going to be playing next year, I think he becomes a great player. I think his draft stock actually shoots through the roof because, and we talked about this, and this was one of our topics while you were gone. There was a report out about some of the Florida players actually working out with Tim Montgomery and going away from their own strength coach during Jim McElwain's tenure, which I thought was the most mind-boggling thing I've ever. I mean, when I tell you that,
I think you and I did talk about
when we left Scott Cochran, I couldn't even walk to my car. I definitely wasn't going to work out with anybody else, and so. I think that CeCe Jefferson, I think you get back inside of the program. I think you get this new, Nick Savage, I think is the new strength coach down there.
Great name for a strength coach.
It definitely is. He is a savage. I think you get back within that strength and conditioning program. You get to a defense that maybe even suits you a little bit better this year and let your stock go through the roof. Nobody is debating the fact that CeCe Jefferson is a great top shelf player in the SEC. But I think give it another year, give it a different system, and get in a little bit better shape that becomes more explosive, and I think his stock goes through the roof.
Trey Duke says, "Did CeCe Jefferson say road to Atlanta?" So Georgia fans obviously laughing at Florida on that, but I mean, I'm going to say it in a point-blank fashion. Florida has a weak roster right now. On a weak roster, you need as much talent as you can get. Keeping CeCe Jefferson around for another year is a big, big help for Florida. We saw the absence of those pros, how that hurt the Florida team in 2016. I think holding on to CeCe Jefferson is a big deal. And looks like we now know who may be coaching Jefferson, some of his other position mates there. Raiders linebackers coach Sal Sinceri is expected to take a job with the Gators as its defensive line coach, expected to be announced as early as today. This is a guy that knows the SEC well, got great respect as a recruiter here. I think Sinceri coming back to the SEC with Florida, I think that's also, you're adding, what I think is a competent name, a guy that understands the rigors of recruiting. I think this is a pretty good hire by Dan Mullen here, if and when, I guess, it does become official.
Yeah, listen, I touched on this a little bit yesterday, and Sal Sinceri was at Alabama with me. I mean, this is a guy who came over from the Panthers, and I mentioned yesterday, had Charles Johnson and Julius Peppers were his rush-ins at Carolina, and then all of a sudden he comes out and helps us onto a lot of success at Alabama. And I think he's a great coach. He's one of those no-nonsense kind of guys. He's got like this Italian, New York mafioso thing going on. His son Vinny played at Alabama and was a draft pick for the New Orleans Saints. He's a no-nonsense guy, but he knows how to coach the rush position. I mean, he knows how to coach you to use your hands, knows how to rip the edge. He's been around a ton of incredible players in the NFL and in college football, and I think he is a huge addition to the staff in terms of who he's going to be getting back, who he's going to be working with, and the speed and the defense that they always seem to have at Florida. I think he's got a pocket full.
We'll talk to them about the Auburn Tigers here in AT&T SEC Country Live. We'll get to that. Before we do that, though, let's do our My Bookie Best Bet segment, of course. Only one big game to bet coming up. It's the national championship game on Monday. Let's take a look at that point spread courtesy of our friends at MyBookie. It's our My Bookie Best Bet for today. And we were actually talking about this before the show here a little bit, that when you think about this line, kind of where it's been, that sort of Alabama -4 range. Listen, Alabama's a point spread favorite for a reason. You'll hear me say that. I mean, Alabama's justifiably the favorite here. But I think in terms of the number, there's a big difference in that extra point. You make this a field goal game, at that point in time, it's a lot easier for me to see Alabama covering this number. But as a 4-point, or in some cases, I guess maybe at MyBookie it's been as much as a 5-point number at some point in time. At that point in time, I'm all off of Alabama. I've got great respect for the Crimson Tide. I don't think they're winning this game by a touchdown, though. It's a closer game than that one way or another.
It's a tough line. I mean, those bookies are out there in Las Vegas and they're sitting themselves. And we've talked about it a bunch on the show. It's almost not even even about what the offenses are versus the defense. It's that Vegas respects the fact that Nick Saban, you know what you're getting. You're not going to get a lot of turnovers. You're not going to have a lot of special teams snafus for the most part, and there's not going to be a ton of explosive plays against your defense. So that's usually the way Vegas judges these Alabama spreads. That's why they've been favored like 111 of the last 112 times they've taken the field. I will say this, Kirby Smart is building the exact same model. I mean, they are going to run the game. They're going to take control of the clock. They're not going to turn the ball over the ton. They're not going to have a ton of penalties, and you're not going to see a ton of explosives on the field. And so I'm with you. The hook at the end, you get past the field goal and you start looking at 4 points. It starts making it difficult to bet either way. I look at this game and I could see it. Listen, I could see it getting lopsided both ways too. I could see Georgia winning by 14-21, and I could see Bama winning by 14 and 21. I think it's going to be interesting to see the game plans play out in the field and how those scores seem to go back and forth.
I think the thing that concerns you a little bit if you're Georgia, and you touched on this before, Georgia's trying to build what Alabama has. Does that mean that Georgia, who has had a great recruiting class in 2017, those guys are playing right now, at least a lot of them are, but Alabama's been just a little bit better in recruiting, a little deeper in each of the position groups. And to do those tiny edges at different spots, does that add up to a recipe for an Alabama victory? That's the kind of thing I think that Georgia fans do have to be concerned about. You have to take that very seriously. But I believe Georgia has the capability of at least hanging around and keeping it. Now, I'll make a final pick later on the week, but in terms of keeping within the 4 points, I believe that Georgia can do that.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And listen, I've told you at times before, we talked about this back in August when I first said this. I thought, Georgia's going to be really good this year. I'd already had them pegged as a 10-game winner. I thought they were going to be a great football team. I told you that I thought when the dynasty really was going to start for Georgia was once they got those two trench, the defensive line and the offensive line, once he got all his recruits on board, then you were going to start to see championship after championship. Well, it turns out that maybe I was wrong, that maybe we are a year ahead of schedule and he has coached that lineup to be better. But you're right. It's almost like it's like 1 year and you're kind of teetering on what's been there for a little bit and what might be the new kid on the block.
If you want to get some action down in the national championship game yourself, whether it's the point spread, you got like a money line pick, you like Georgia's a 4-point underdog to win the game outright, I'm sure that MyBookie's got a strong money line play for you there. Or you can go, over under. You can do the total points. You can do a lot of stuff. You can play with the pros play and be a big winner. And right now, the folks at MyBookie are going to make you an even bigger winner than that because your first deposit can be matched up to 100% when you use the promo code SECLive. The promo code SECLive, the website mybookie.ag. Get your first deposit matched up to 100% when you use that promo code. And y'all know MyBookie by now. It's the sports book that's known for the fast, no-hassle payout when you win just 2 business days. So a really strong place to get your action down. It is the place the pros play. You play, you win, you get paid. It's as simple as that. And your first deposit can be matched up to 100%. The website, one more time, mybookie.ag. The promo code SECLive. All right, let me dive back in here with item number 6 in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And we'll talk more about Georgia and Alabama here coming up in just a moment. Before that, though, on item number 6, as I'm sure you all talked about yesterday, Kerryon Johnson, the Auburn running back, has declared for the NFL draft. He's leaving the Auburn program. He was obviously arguably one of the 2 or 3 best players in the entire SEC all season long. But where does Auburn go now in finding its running game now that Johnson's going to be departed? Well, one of the guys speaking up here is Cam Martin, a guy that's apparently pretty excited about his own opportunity to have his day in the sun. Here's what Martin told AL.com, that he feels like he had an okay season this year, Very blessed to be here at Auburn. My time is going to come this year. I'm believing it because I know it's going to happen. So Cameron Martin, the guy that kind of filled in as a replacement for both Kerryon Johnson and Cam Petway at times this season, feels like 2018 is going to be his year. Do you agree with Martin on this?
I do. I think he showed a ton of explosiveness. I think that they have to go back, in my opinion, they have to go back to the 2-headed model. I think that, I don't know if it's Asa Martin, I don't know what you have to put in there to have that dynamic, but I don't think you can put all those carries on one guy again. I think that, listen, they tried to have that. Obviously, you're going to lose a guy like Cam Petway to the NFL as well. And I think that when they're at their best in Gus Malzahn's system, I think they have the thunder and lightning style. I don't know that Ken Martin at 185 or whatever he's weighing right now, 190, can withstand the type of running back that Auburn needs. I think they need a guy in there that can split it up. You get 20 carries to one guy, 10 carries to the other guy, and let those guys kind of hit each other in different plays. Cam Martin, to me, while he will have an extremely good year next year, he'll be a 1,000-yard rusher probably. I think Auburn has to find another complementary piece, in my opinion, for them to really hit their stride and make a difference in the SEC West.
You mentioned Asa Martin, one of the prize recruits for Auburn in the class of 2018. With the announcement of Kerryon Johnson, it almost certainly seems like Auburn's going to use one of its final remaining slots in 2018 to sign another running back. Who might that running back be? Well, there's some speculation here. It could be Harold Joyner. Joyner, who for a while was in the mix with LSU, but a miscommunication or a lack of communication, maybe the better way to say it. Looks like Joyner's relationship with LSU is now over. As far as what he told SEC Country about Auburn, he says it's close to home. Makes sense to set up my official visit to go there first. Plus, Auburn's one of my top schools I've been looking at forever. It's the hometown team. They're a great offense. They run a spread. I think it fits me really well. So here's an example of a guy in Harold Joyner who at one point in time was thought to be close to LSU. He's been recruited by other programs. But now the need for Auburn may be so great that Joyner just gets a more intense brand of recruitment, and a lot of times that extra attention can be enough to win a recruit over.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't. I mean, this is a guy out of Birmingham, out of Mountain Brook High School. He's a guy who's shown flashes at time and really being a game-breaking style of back. I think he might actually, when you look at recruiting boards, I think he's the number one running back left on the board that hasn't signed early. And so I think that a lot of programs start looking at him and saying, you know what? We didn't get enough running backs. All of a sudden, we have 2 running backs going to the draft. Maybe that's an extra piece that we need to add. And if that's the case, good for Harold Joyner, good for Auburn, because I think that they start to fit next to each other. When you talk about kind of sizing things up with needs and wants, I think they're a perfect fit together.
I think that when it's all said and done, though, the Auburn rushing game is going to be fine. I don't know if it's Cam Martin. I don't know if it's a freshman running back like Asa Martin. I don't know if it's one of the other guys like Malik Miller, somebody that's already on the team. I don't know who fills the void and who gets the yards, and I'm not telling you the person who's there is going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist, but I think that collections of data over the course of years matters here. And if you look at Auburn, historically, they've got a pretty good running game. We don't know the names yet, but the track record, I think, ought to speak for itself here. It'll be a storyline worth following to find out who does become the replacement for Kerryon Johnson, and to a certain extent Cam Petway. But when it's all said and done, I think Auburn's going to be just fine.
I think they're going to be just fine. I think what's scary if you look at Auburn, you look at the pieces they're going to be replacing along the offensive line. Jarrett Stidham still up in there. I think he's leaning towards going back to Auburn, but still kind of up in there. Yeah. You could be looking at losing. I mean, Carlton Davis already declared out of the secondary. You could be looking at an Auburn team that's missing some huge pieces from this year. And so I think that's a little bit scary. I don't think Auburn fans look at what they had, the SEC West title, beating 2 number 1 teams, going to Atlanta. I don't think they look at that and think, okay, reset button now. I think that the reset button comes after championships, and then you say, okay, maybe we need to rebuild. So I think that Auburn fans, that's what's going to be crazy about this, is what are they counting on doing next year, or do you think they get back to square one? Gus Malzahn showed the ability to really get some of these guys in there, coach them up, develop them, and make them into a great offense. But, man, you're missing a lot of pieces from this year's team if everybody starts to leave.
Michael Collin brings up an interesting point. Auburn also losing a lot off the offensive line. With Braden Smith leaving. That becomes a challenge, but I'm always going to put my money on these perpetual top 10 classes. There are a few teams in the SEC that get them every year. Georgia, Auburn, LSU, Alabama. It's really those 4. Texas A&M's closed for a while. They kind of fell off. Florida's not been at that level lately. Tennessee hasn't really been at that level for the last couple of years, but Auburn's in that group. So the perpetual sort of replenishing of recruits here, I think gives Auburn a chance to be just fine, regardless of who it loses. Now, Jarrett Stidham leading would change my tune here a little bit, but overall, I'm going to trust Auburn here to replace some of what it's losing.
And I think you should. I think I look at it, and listen, they had two grad transfers last year on their offensive line, or in the 2 deep. They're looking at losing 4 guys, I believe, from their 2 deep on their offensive line. I think that's what becomes scary. I think that you look at the situation, obviously, that LSU was in this past year, where all of a sudden these guys started transferring, you're left with true freshmen as your backup. That's not what Auburn wants to get into. So you look at what they're going to do next year offensively, and you got to hope, if you're an Auburn fan, that they stay healthy in some of these key areas while guys behind them develop.
All right, let me remind you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Let's turn back our attention to the national championship here for a moment and a potential challenge facing Georgia. Now, you know this scenario better than anybody because you played these type of games. You played in the NFL too, where I imagine this kind of travel was a little more of an issue. I want you to listen to Kirby Smart here. He's talking about the emotion that Georgia had to play with against Oklahoma, and let's figure out how Georgia's going to recuperate here in the days after that Rose Bowl game. Here's Kirby Smart again.
Very emotional game last night, which concerns me, and talked to the players immediately afterwards about not burning any more energy or emotion on that game and moving on. Alabama had a little more sound victory, so they probably didn't burn quite as much emotion, although I know it was emotional to beat a team that beat them last year. And the focus moving forward will be on preparing for Alabama and what's a great program Coach Saban's got.
So Kirby Smart lays it out. Georgia plays in California. emotional game, double overtime. Georgia has to come back from a deficit. Really laid a lot on the line in Pasadena just to get out of there with a win. Alabama, conversely, is playing the reigning national champions, and they don't like Clemson right now, but it's an easier win. Alabama may have been coasting a bit there at the end. They also travel within the same time zone to go back to Tuscaloosa. Does all that equal an advantage, even if it's just a tiny one, an advantage for Alabama in this game?
I think it does. And I think it is tiny because I think what you have here is a guy in Kirby Smart that knows his way around situations like this. I think that Kirby Smart's got to get – I'm sure they have a leadership council. I'm not even – I know that, that's something that Nick Saban did. You get a leadership council together. You talk to these guys. Before you even leave the stadium, before you even left the Rose Bowl, you're talking to these guys. And you're saying, you know what? Everybody will be in the cold tub tomorrow. Everybody will be getting 3 square meals. We will be showing up watching film. And then we will rest. And we're going to do whatever we have to get our legs back up on you. A lot of people don't understand. These games that are back-to-back like this, you get on an airplane. First of all, airplanes dehydrate you as it is. You have to kill water on these airplanes to be able to keep your hydration. That's what you need to get your legs back up under you. So I'm telling you right now, Kirby Smart gets with the leadership council. All these seniors that he has on his team, the senior-laden offense, senior-laden defense, you get with those guys and you say, listen, this has to be the game plan. It's not about, it's not about checking your grades and doing these things. It's about that too. But get in the right situation healthy-wise. Get in the cold tub and make sure you're getting meals. I think that's going to be a huge deal for that team.
Armand Rashad says, he's a Georgia fan, by the way, the long trip won't be an issue for Georgia as long as they take advantage of the day off. Here's the thing, though. This is just real talk. My travel schedule is actually fairly similar to Georgia's, except it was just a day later. Georgia leaves late on Monday night. They're home by 6 or 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Yeah. I did the same thing, except I left Tuesday night around 8 p.m., got back to Atlanta, that's my hometown, around 5:36 in the morning. So last night I slept in my own bed, got a full night's sleep. I'm still exhausted right now. I'm not trying to whine because it was a great trip. I had a great time. But if I had to go out and do something athletic right now, I wouldn't be able to do it at my peak level of athleticism. And as a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs, I do have a little bit of concern of, and this is not excuse making because this won't be the reason that Georgia wins or loses, but obviously I want Georgia to have everything going for it it can. And I feel like short week already, long trip, I do feel like that I'd prefer for Georgia not to be in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying
But by the way, the close double overtime game where you had to beat the Heisman Trophy winner factors into that a little bit too.
This is not like this was like a coasting victory.
Right,
I mean,
you were in a dogfight.
You left it all on the field. Adrenaline flowing. I mean, you talk about soreness from your muscles. I mean, when I got done with the game in the Rose Bowl, I laid down in a bed. I didn't even celebrate. I went straight to sleep. I was exhausted. And so I'm trying to give everybody a feel for what this is as an athlete, where your legs are shot, and then all of a sudden you're getting on a plane, and you're sitting up, or you're trying to recline, you're doing all these things, you're trying to chug water to make sure you're staying hydrated so that your muscles can replenish themselves. It's tough. I don't know if it's not a huge advantage for Alabama. That's not what I'm trying to make it out as. What I'm trying to say is they have an uphill battle to get their legs and their shape back to form. Now, there is a flip side of that in my mind. I think that when you go in and you have these hard-fought battles and you have all of the adrenaline pumping, that there is an opportunity for that to carry over. That you say, you know what, we're going to do whatever we have to. We're going to get back to the grinder. We're going to do everything we need to win this next week. But it is a tougher schedule than what Alabama had to face, no doubt in my mind.
All right, Bobo Onari says, are we really going to talk about the UCF thing today? Yeah, we are, at least for a couple minutes here on our AT&T SEC Country Live 1st and 10. So, as y'all, I'm sure, talked about yesterday, UCF has proclaimed itself national champions. They also send out this message that they're planning a parade here as well. We'll show you that on Twitter. The coach is also getting their national championship bonuses, which I'm sure they never probably thought they'd cash in on. But they're at the Walt Disney World Resort Sunday at 4:30, a UCF parade to proclaim themselves national champions of college football. They say, well, we're going to Disney World. That's what we're going to do next year. That's the 2017 national champions on Twitter, according to them anyway, UCF here. So you probably waited on this yesterday, but just give me your overall thoughts on what UCF's doing here.
Listen, I think it's all about recruiting. I said that yesterday on the show. I think that this is a recruiting edge for them that they try to say, and I was telling Hans yesterday, when we lost the 08 SEC championship and we lost the Sugar Bowl to Utah, we got rings for that. And it's all about recruiting. Hey, we can put this ring on coach's desk, or we can put this ring here, or show that to recruits. We got rings for this. We won something. I think that's what UCF is doing. And listen, they have the right to do whatever they want to. You can hang banners, do a parade all you want to. Doesn't mean I have to pay attention to it. Doesn't mean I have to name you national champion. It just means that you're doing that somewhere down in Atlanta, and I respect the fact that you want to do it. I think the players have earned that right. I think they had a great season. They're not the NCAA national champions by a mile for me.
All right, timeout. Y'all are getting on me and giving me a hard time because I talked about doing something at my peak athleticism about the night before. I'm not comparing myself to a football player. I got Robert Hosea says, what's your peak athleticism?
Yeah.
I've got Greg Steele who says I'm peaking right now. I'm not telling you that I'm going to be like some sort of athletic specimen, but I'm telling you if I had to go run around the block right now, I'm not even sure I could do it because I'm tired. I just got off an airplane 2 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
long flight.
Terry Crews comes and says pro teams travel like this all the time. And it's very true. Pro teams do this thing from coast to coast. What I'm doing is comparing Alabama to what Georgia did. I'm not saying that this is impossible.
Don't give me pro teams do this all the time. The West Coast teams that come east get waxed every time they come
that's true.
east.
That is true. And you can look at things that happen the weeks after you travel. And I'm telling you, it's lopsided in that direction. So it does happen in the pros, but I'm comparing what Alabama did. They have a puddle jumper flight back to Tuscaloosa in their own time zone. And I think Alabama actually stayed the night in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken, compared to a team that flew all through the night after a 2-overtime Rose Bowl game.
And to go back to the UCF thing for a minute, I really only got 2 points to make about this. A, it is possible for something to be both dumb and smart at the same time. This is a dumb argument. UCF's probably smart to make it because it just draws attention to yourself. Exactly. And it's all pro wrestling, and this is just their way of getting attention. But this whole UCF storyline makes me so mad at Auburn I can't stand it. How are you going to let this team beat you in Atlanta, a stadium that you ought to know well? You just played there. You got to have a little bit of motivation. They talk trash about you the entire time. How does Auburn lay down and die to UCF? Now you got this ham and egg glorified high school proclaiming itself a national champion because you couldn't take care of your business in that game. I'm so mad at Auburn over this, I can't stand it.
Well, listen, I can't be mad at Auburn because I've done the same thing before. I just mentioned the fact that we lost the SEC championship in 2008 and then lost to Utah. I didn't play much in that game. I got hurt early in the game, but you know, it's tough, man.
Yeah, but y'all weren't trying. I mean, Auburn
exactly. That's my point.
Auburn should have been trying.
That's my point. Is that it's tough to keep the edge like UCF. UCF was going and playing like it was a national title. Auburn was like, we're a couple of we're a couple of miles down the road in Atlanta. We're gonna have family in town. It's Christmas. It's New Year's, and we're gonna do all the things we want to. And who cares if we lose to UCF? So, I'm on Auburn about it. I wish they would have won, but it is what it is.
All right, I'm dying to hear your answer to this question. Let's do item number 9 on our AT&T SEC Country Life First and 10 list. So the Arizona job is open. Some candidates are emerging. Let me start with what's being said about former LSU coach Les Miles here. Apparently things are getting serious between Miles and the Wildcats. Neil McCready, that's a Ole Miss writer for Rival, says that he's hearing Les Miles in real communication with the University of Arizona today. Both parties are mutually interested. Miles wants to get back on the field. We kind of already know that. But Miles not the only former SEC coach with apparent tie to the Arizona job. There's also this report from reporter Aaron McMahon, who says another name to keep an eye on as a possible replacement at Arizona, Butch Jones. Arizona AD Dave, I guess it's Heek, not sure how you pronounce that, hired him at Central Michigan, where Jones coached from 2007 to 2009. So all that is a backdrop to ask you this. If you're the AD, would you rather have Les Miles or Butch Jones as your coach?
That's tough. And we talked a little bit about Kevin Sumlin yesterday. His name had come up a couple of times. I guess it's kind of withered away from that, but it's got to be Les Miles. I think it's got to be
not
Les.
Not anymore.
Listen, I know he's old, and I know that offenses may have passed him by, and his best coaching years are behind him. But you can't tell me that a guy like Butch Jones has a better resume or will do better at Arizona than Les Miles will. We're
not talking about resumes. We're talking about guys that can coach right now. Miles has gone after every job, and he can't even get a look. Butch Jones is at least a competent coach. And in a place like Arizona,
I didn't even know that he was a competent coach. It's one thing for me to say
I get what you're saying.
Butch Jones, it's just I don't think if you're in Arizona you can afford to hire him. I mean, he got laughed out of Tennessee. He got fired in October, dang near. I think Les Miles has at least a national championship ring in his back pocket.
That is true. But every problem that Butch Jones seemed to have at Tennessee seemed to stem from, oh my gosh, this job's just too big for him because Tennessee fans have expectations, and he couldn't meet those expectations and couldn't really manage those expectations. They were just swallowing him whole. You don't have any of that at Arizona. I mean, Arizona's in the middle of nowhere. It's a gazillion miles from here. They'll take anything. Just go to a bowl. They're going to be fine. I want Butch Jones over Les Miles.
Jamie Bailey's got my back. They're all wondering what you're talking about. And listen, and it is on here too. Kevin Sumlin, if he does not get a look at this job.
Sumlin's a better coach than
and one of those two guys does get the job, then something's wrong.
Kevin Sumlin's going to get a better job in Arizona.
Well,
Arizona's not a good job.
We're kind of late in the process now to be thinking Kevin Sumlin's going to get a job, though, I think.
I'm saying when he coaches again, first of all, he's rich. I mean, he just sit back and relax.
That's true.
But when he does coach again, he's going to get a better job than Butch Jones I've been trying to tell y'all for a while. Les Miles is not a coach. Now, Arizona just may not know that. I mean, he obviously had great success, but he's not a candidate for any serious job anymore because he's been turned down for these jobs. I'm just telling you.
My man Maurice Carter says, I'm with you, Mike. Butch Jones is a joke that isn't funny at all. I mean,
there you go.
I'm telling you right now, I just think that Arizona cannot afford to go hire Butch Jones around. You can make the case for Les Miles. I don't care what his interview looks like. The guy can coach football. Can't afford to hire Butch Jones right now. You just can't.
Yeah, now that's a different argument, that it's been too soon to a lot of really strange stuff at Tennessee. That may be the case. But the folks in Arizona don't even know about that stuff.
That's true.
You could call him Lyle Jones. That's his real first name. The folks in Arizona wouldn't even know the difference.
They might
not paying attention.
By the way, I mean,
they're out playing golf or going to the pool or something like that.
Not to go off on a tangent too much about Kevin Sumlin, but if he does get a job at Arizona, you talk about a perfect marriage, in my opinion. For Kevin Sumlin to go out to the Pac-12 where you don't have to play defense, I think that'd be a great hire.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have to play defense. I like that. All right. By the way, AT&T's proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Politics free here. We're not going to mention any kind of political stuff whatsoever, but I did find it somewhat interesting for item number 10 that Greg Bluestein, a reporter for our sister publication here, the AJC, reporting that President Donald Trump plans to attend the Georgia-Alabama football national championship game. And Mike, I got to tell you, I don't know if you've ever seen a presidential motorcade. These things are absolute disasters.
Yes.
You saw the president. You were in the White House. The motorcade is an entirely different animal, though. I've seen these things in Atlanta before. They close every street in every direction. This game on Monday is going to be such a madhouse already because Georgia and Alabama fans are descending on this place by the tens and tens of thousands. This is about the only thing that you could do to sort of turn it into another circus, a bigger sideshow. I cannot believe that Trump is coming. I would advise any fan who has any interest in this game whatsoever to get where you're trying to get very early and then don't leave from there because the roads in Atlanta are going to be closed.
Listen, if you don't live in Atlanta, do me a favor. I want you to park at the farthest away MARTA station or whatever direction you're coming to and jump on the MARTA because do not think that you're going to drive through downtown Atlanta on the 75-85 connector during rush hour at 5 o'clock on Monday when it's probably going to be sleeting. It's going to be like 20 degrees outside. It's going to be freezing rain. There's going to be ice all over the roads. Don't think that you're going to do that. And once they shut down the roads for this motorcade, don't think that you're going to get somewhere on time. I'm telling you right now, park far away, take the MARTA, do whatever you got to do. I'm going to try to get down there as early as I can. And obviously, we're going to have the show going on too, but there's no way I'm trying to make it back home before I go to that game.
Terry Crews said he'd hire the trash can before he'd hire Butch Jones. Some of y'all are just killing me for what I said about Butch Jones and Les Miles. I love the fact that somehow Les Miles is some coaching genius. The last time we saw him at LSU, things weren't exactly going so well for him either.
Well, they weren't, but I'm just telling you that Les Miles is a guy, like Mark Richt topped on somewhere. Mark Richt didn't have a national title, but he was a solid coach. 9-10 win seasons. Hops on right back at Miami. They go to a title game. Les Miles could do that, given the right circumstance. Butch Jones, he has shown me nothing that tells me he's going to get your program to the next level.
You cannot compare Les Miles and Mark Richt for one simple reason. Miles had greater ultimate success than Richt did because he won a national championship. But what makes Richt a much more attractive candidate than Les Miles is that Richt's a play caller. Les Miles' problem is not only could he not call plays himself, he had a hard time finding play callers. He had to completely outsource the offense, which is the most important side of the ball in this modern day and age in college football. So Miles is a historically more successful coach than Richt, but Richt's a more valuable commodity because he brings play calling with him.
I think the play calling is definitely a notch in his direction. Now, we're obviously off topic on topic number 10 right now, but I will tell you what is the check of Miles over Mark Richt is player development. Listen, the ton of great players at Georgia, in my opinion, when you talk about the talent they had, they should have done more with some of the talent. I think that Miles did a lot with the talent he had at LSU. Now, you get a different offensive coordinator. I don't know what you have to do, but I'm just telling you, higher than Butch Jones, Les Miles, there's not even a doubt in my mind.
Are you got anything else you want to say about Donald Trump?
No, not really.
Yeah,
I'm
my only point is I don't care who you vote for. Traffic's going to be terrible.
That's exactly what it is. That's the storyline.
Be very, very careful about that. All right, we got a pretty funny champion of life. We'll do that with you coming up in just a moment. For now, though, as we said, AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Let's do our AT&T look ahead. Listen, what else would you look ahead to on a day like this? Georgia, Alabama coming up on Monday. Georgia is the better seeded team here. They'll be in the red jerseys. Alabama will be in the white with the crimson trim. Just after 8 p.m. on Monday from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Sure enough, you and I are going to have a good time talking about that this week. But I have to say in all sincerity, it's just going to be a terrific, terrific game. I cannot wait for it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that this is the matchup everybody wanted. In my opinion, everybody that obviously hangs out on this show. And when you talk about a dream ending to a season like this, we didn't get to play each other in the SEC title game. I think that Kirby versus Nick Saban, all the storylines, it's going to be an incredible Monday.
Senator Watts in the comment section says, "BA, no political junk on this show." Listen, here's the one thing you can be very take to the bank. You're going to be 100% right on this. Mike and I are never talking politics. That's just not what we do here.
No.
You don't ever have to worry about that on this show. We stay as far away from that kind of stuff as we can. But if you live in Atlanta, stay off the traffic on Monday because that is not going to be a good day whatsoever. All right, let's close at the show the way we always do. It's our AT&T SEC Country Live Champion of Life. We do that at the end of every show. And today, there has been a lot of snow for a lot of our audience, especially if you live on the Georgia coast. Charleston got hammered with a bunch of snow. Mm-hmm. A lot of that snow, I guess, is also getting ready to move north here and going into the northeast, and they're a lot more equipped to handle the snow. In fact, at times they can be pretty creative in terms of how they get around, including this fellow right here who, not wanting to sort of brave the snow and ice himself, figured out a pretty creative way to sort of get where he was going. Take a look at this. This is like a scooter. Look at the dog just pulling the scooter.
Dude, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Where did this thing come from?
Is it Philadelphia? Is that where this is from? Yes, this guy in Philadelphia is getting pulled by the dog here on the sleigh. It's almost like the Iditarod or something like that.
It looks like the Grinch. Like, it looks like, he's got his dog out in front of him. He's rolling downhill, getting ready to go steal Christmas.
Yeah, that may be true. And listen, underrated aspect of the snow, and neither one of us have much experience with snow. You grew up in Florida and played at Alabama. I've lived in Georgia my whole life. But when there's snow, walking is sneaky hard to do.
Oh, it definitely is.
Sneaky hard to do.
When it snowed here, 3 weeks ago?
You let the dog, that thing looked like a husky or something like that. That thing's bred for the snow.
Yeah,
you let that creature figure out the snow out while you ride atop it. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, Charles Goodson says 2 inches here in Savannah, Georgia. That blows my mind. I mean, my sister lives in Virginia Beach. They got a ton of snow up there. Everything's freezing.
Yeah, Savannah, Georgia, 2 inches. 5 inches of snow in Charleston.
Yeah, it's
insane. Imagine that?
It's
That's
insane.
Crazy. All right, well, if you are where it's snowy, stay warm. And, of course, plenty of the South is very cold right now. So thanks for bundling up and watching AT&T SEC Country Live. We're back together again tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as we roll towards the National Championship Day. We also have a few more announcements coming up about some very special broadcasts that we're going to be a part of. We'll be telling you about a lot of that kind of stuff as well. So it's a big, big week and weekend for us, heading towards Monday's National Championship. Thanks for watching AT&T SEC Country Live. Listen to the podcast. It's on iTunes. Share the show with your friends, and we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of the show. Y'all have a great day.